All right, so it's a great pleasure to welcome you all on the third webinar of our series, Accelerating Mental Health. So this is a webinar series that is brought to life jointly by Tartu Biotechnology Park and Scandic and powered by EIT Health. So EIT Health is probably the largest innovation network in Europe and one of the largest ones in the world. It contains about 200 partners from different stakeholder groups, public and private sector, also academia and society, patient groups as well. And the aim of this network is to support the health innovation in Europe on three different levels. So this is on the business side, it's on the research side, and it's also in education. And today we have with us Rosa from Kasve. So Kasve is a well-known company from Finland to support early stage innovators and also companies, more likely companies, with MDR topics and more specifically registering medical devices. So shortly with that, hopefully Rosa you will say a few words more about your company, but with that I would give the floor to you. I will also make you a co-host, so you have I will have to ask Trine to make you a co-host, so you can also share the screen if you don't already have those rights.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Sven.
Okay, good.
At least
all right. Great to have you, Rosa. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you. So let me share the screen and let's get starting. So welcome from my side. Today's topic, medical device regulation and market entry. I will shortly give you an introduction to the MDR and the related standards. So thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I hope, depending on the participant, depending on if we want to focus on the show itself or the webinar, or if we want to have some discussions, maybe you will then cut them out from the video before you send it further. But let's start. So today we're going to do a first scratch on the NDR. Who am I? ROSA TENGVALL from Kasve Oy from Finland, currently working as lead quality engineer, basically working with customer projects as a regulatory expert. So building up quality management systems according to 13485, so the quality management system standard, helping companies to develop their products according to the regulation and the related standard, for example, 62304 for softwares. I'm currently also working with agile product development project management platforms. So we provide our customers also this kind of service to set up a platform where they can automatically work and develop their product according to the MDR requirements. My background is from system engineering, large-scale systems that I have been building or been as a project quality manager. So strong quality background, but also now with medical device twist. What Kasve does is that we work with the healthcare industry, mostly startups, to help them grow their business, commercialize their products that have both individual and societal significance. So what we want to do is to embrace new technologies, to bring them forward, to bring them to market in EU, but also under FDA. So we focus that the customers have a quick and cost-effective and smooth market entry as possible. And there comes the regulatory part. So in order to have this smooth and fast and efficient market entry, you need to understand where you start and which requirements apply to you. And that's why we're here today. Let's do it this way. You can have different tracks. You can have your own team to go to market, or you can have support from consultants or other expertise. Just shortly, we have our experts who can help you on the market entry under an MDR, and we also have a tool, a comprehensive online toolkit where you can actually understand the requirements that you need to fulfill in order to have this market entry. Looking forward to your connections, possibly. Let's see after this training what you want to hear and if we can help you. But today's track was about the MDR. So we discuss, or I will present you some key topics on the MDR. First, we need to start with the question, are you actually dealing with the medical device? So what might be the intended purpose and the classification of your upcoming or future medical device? If you already have some medical device experience, then of course it's easier for you to focus on the requirements. If you are dealing with the medical device, what are the key aspects from the MDR that you need to focus on? What does it mean to you? And then I don't promise you a deep dive, because the MDR is just such a huge document, over 800 pages, but we make a small dive to the MDR requirements and the standard framework where you need to start. Let's get kicking. Are you dealing with the medical device? The definition comes from the regulation, the MDR, from Article 2. So medical device means any instrument, apparatus, appliance, software, implant, reagent material, or other article highlighted intended by the manufacturer to be used for human beings for different medical purposes. So if you're dealing with humans and you're intended to do something medical with the human beings, for example, diagnosing, prevention, monitoring, prediction, prognosis, or treatment, you're going to hit the medical device framework. It can be also in vitro, but then you will have in vitro regulation, not only MDR. What differs medical device from a medicament is that the intended action cannot be achieved by pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means. Medical device for human beings for the manufacturer's intended purpose for medical device, or medical intended purpose. Medical device can be a hardware or a software. So when I discuss about devices, both are included. Medical device software is a software that is also intended to be used as a medical device, or purpose specified under the medical device definition. The software can be actually driving some hardware, or it can be independent. So for example, a health app or application software. The most important thing when you start is to get a clear understanding on the intended purpose, because that's the most important action the manufacturer needs to do and pay attention to. So the intended purpose, that is also a definition from the regulation, tells you exactly for what the product can be used and for what not. So you start narrowing down your framework with the intended purpose. Of course, you say that you cannot use this medical device for this and that, but you still need to consider off-label use, so at least partly. So if you can have this understanding that what type of actions or use the person or patient could have with your device, you need to foresee it and also claim against. So have a clear understanding what does it do, what does it not do, and foresee the off use or off-label use that can happen. So we talk about indications and contraindications. From the intended purpose, you actually already have some requirement setting. So it should include a general description, user identification. So who is actually using the device? Is it someone from the marketplace? Is it a doctor? Is it an elderly person, youngster, a child? So who is the user of the device? And what kind of situation is it used? For example, home use or in hospitals. It gives you different requirements from the regulation. You need to identify the diagnosis that you're used or that you will use the medical device, both medical and non-medical, if applicable. So diseases, conditions, diagnoses. What you cannot use the device for, of course. Then the principle of operation or the mode of action. So how does it work? Does it need electricity? Is it the hardware? Is it purely software? Is it an application or does it work with the laptop? So mode of action. Justification why the medical device is a medical device. So stepping back to the definition, what was a medical device? Why do we actually hit the MDR? And also the risk classification or the category. So let's talk about that in a second. But start defining the intended purpose. Or if you're working in a hospital or somewhere where you use the medical devices, the intended purpose should be the first stop. So that you can understand what the device is about. You search for the intended purpose, you read it, and then you have a better understanding what you can expect from the medical device. Talking about the risk classification. So now you have a medical device, you have your intended purpose clear. You need to assess the risk caused by the medical device. So again, you narrow down your requirements that you need to fulfill from the MDR. So there are 3 classes, class 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. And of course, the requirements and demonstrating that you actually meet them grows when you grow the class. So class 1 is the simplest or the easiest way. Class 3 requires a lot of documentation, clinical evidence, etc. So the class determines the scope of the requirements later on. For the medical device softwares, there's also a classification rules called Rule 11. So you can narrow it down. If it's used for diagnosis or therapeutic purposes, you land under 2A. If you monitor some physiological processes, still 2A. If you have some vital processes, then you go to 2B. Or if your software can cause death or deterioration, you land to class 3. So depending on these verbs, what does it do? You have a different classification. If it doesn't do any of these, you can classify your software as class 1. You also consider the duration of use, so it can affect your classification. But the most important thing is to understand that you had 22 rules plus this 1 rule for software. So you need to consider all of them. If more than 1 rule applies, the stricter one is the one you will select. So there is this guidance for classification of softwares, MDCG 2019-11, where you can check the details. For softwares, still the classification, you also have this safety classification called APC. So we start building your framework from the medical device classification and from the software safety classification. Here you assume the risk and probability of failure. What can your software cause if it fails? The interesting part here is that you assume that the software fails every time. So the probability for risk realization is 100%. So you need to consider some external controls for your software in order to narrow down the risk. So different things you need to consider when you start aligning your framework. You are dealing with the medical devices. If some of those topics made a light bulb in your head, so what you need to consider from the MDR. This is basically the short version of market entry. So you have your idea, you want to reach EU CE marking and bring your medical device on the market. First, you need just to integrate the MDR in your quality management system. This is the tricky part for most of the startups or research to business teams, that do I really need to start with this regulatory stuff in the beginning, but I do want to just develop my product and just go ahead. But unfortunately, yes, you do. So if you want to have a EU market entry, you need to start considering the MDR requirements and the quality management requirements from day one. So before any code has been done or any product development has been done, you need to have a quality management system in place. Meaning, of course, you can do some prototyping or demo things, but if you really start the track for market entry, you start with the quality management system. We come back to that later on. So step 0 is basically a huge step. Then you confirm your device as a medical device. So you do this intended purpose thinking. What does my medical device do? What does it not do? You will hit the general safety and performance requirements. So MDR has a long list of requirements that you need to fulfill, considering the risk class, of course. And then you start this journey. So you conduct clinical evaluation, you do product development, you do technical documentation, and then start discussing with the authorities. So currently, if and when you're ready with the product development, you have the QMS in place, you have the technical file and the product all in perfect shape. You contact the authority and ask them to audit you. And for that, currently the waiting is approximately 1 year. So thinking for your future, you can achieve this QMS plus technical file minimum 6 months, mostly 1 year. When you're ready, you still need to wait 1 year for the actual CE marking. Currently, the notified bodies are so overloaded with MDR applications. Just for you to understand the timeline, what we are talking about when we talk about MDR market entry. Good, so the step 0 was to just implement the quality management system. So MDR states you as a manufacturer, so when you're developing a medical device, you are the manufacturer of the medical device. You should establish, document, implement, maintain, and keep up to date a quality management system proportionate to the risk class of your device. Meaning that all manufacturers need a QMS, but class 1 doesn't necessarily need to certify the QMS. So you need to have the processes and the system in place, but nobody will come and audit you. Still, what does it mean to have a system in place? First, you need the strategy for regulatory compliance. This is very important stuff and thing after the intended purpose. You start with the intended purpose and then you start drafting this strategy, because you need to understand all the requirements that that affects your product and your company startup team. You will have the general safety and performance requirements. You will have risk management processes, clinical evaluation, product realization, including product development and the documentation. You will have some requirements for the UDI, so device identifications. Continuing, you will have a post-market surveillance system. So what happens after the market entry? How do you ensure that you get the necessary information from the market, that you can act on it, that your device is working according to the intended purpose, etc., etc. You will have or need to have in place a communication plan and process with competent authorities, notified bodies, customers, other stakeholders, for example, subcontractors if you're using any. We'll have a vigilance system, CAPA, so corrective actions, preventive actions, non-conformities, and resource management process. Just a start for the quality management system. So this famous GSPR that everybody is afraid of are the requirements from the MDR. So you can read the MDR as a document, or you can read it as a list of requirements. So this GSPR is the checklist that you need to fulfill. It gives you some requirements for general topics, so that are applicable to all medical device manufacturers. You have some specific requirements regarding design and manufacturing, how you need to plan and perform design and manufacturing. And then the third set is about the information that you need to supply with the device. Not only the software, but then also the instructions for use. For example, you need to do training materials for the patients, for the users, etc. So all of these are regulated under the MDR. The key point in the GSPR is that the medical device must be designed, manufactured, packaged, and labeled in such a way that it is suitable for the intended purpose. So what does the manufacturer say the device does and doesn't do? The key is that it doesn't endanger the safety of the patient or the user. So all these requirements are dancing around the patient safety and security. So there are a new set of requirements, for example, cybersecurity, that can affect also patient safety. So all of these are listed in the GSPR. So I cannot promise you a deep dive to MDR requirements, but let's have a short introduction on the framework. what requirements reply to you, to your team? That's the important thing you need to start identifying. So find out your framework. There is a lot of information, there is a lot of standards, guidances, regulation that you just need to start going through and find out, okay, where do I land? What requirements do I need to fulfill, and what can I leave for the next one? Like mentioned, it starts with the QMS. So the basic framework for the QMS is the ISO 13485, Quality Management Systems for Medical Devices. It gives you the basic structure, the content of the quality management system, in addition to the MDR requirements that you need to fulfill. You will have some kind of risk management process in place. So here, as an example, the 14971. If you're dealing with hardware, also you have the 62601 series for medical electric equipment. Usability, also important stuff both for software and hardware, 62366. For medical device software, 62304. And then etc., etc. If you have in vitro also, so software in vitro diagnostics, there are a lot of different standards that you need to consider. But where do you start? Is actually to search for the organizations that give these different standards. So you have the ISO, that's the most common one. CENELEC currently working together, so European Committee for Standardization. You have the IEC, for example, CLSC for clinical and laboratories, etc. So you start searching for the necessary standards. So just as an example here, these two slides, it's one example how you can start building your framework. So usually you have a company-related standards and requirements for the startup team. Here, the baseline is the quality management system, 13485. You will have some product-related standards. For example, in this case, the medical device software, health software, risk management, usability engineering, and then you have software-related standards. So lifecycle management, cybersecurity, etc. The difference here is that here you have pure software, here you have hardware containing software. So identifying what different modules or applications you have in the medical device, they reflect to the framework of standards that you need to fulfill. For example, here you have the electrical equipment series 62601. If you're dealing with health softwares like this webinar, you can have this kind of matrix framework for standards. So depending on if it's an embed software or standalone, you can have different standards or different parts of the standards that are applicable to you, or if it's a medical device or other health use. So here dealing with the 62304 and 82304, depending on the intended purpose that your device is doing. But like in the beginning, I mentioned that I just want to develop my product and go forward and do the market entry. You usually focus on the chapter 7 of the quality management system standard. So the product realization. Just a reminder, do not focus only on that one, but it's good that you have already something on place. Let's have a deeper dive to this chapter 7. So possibly you will have some understanding that, okay, I have already fulfilled this one, or you didn't, so you can have some feedback benchmarking here. So planning of product realization. When you're working on the MDR or any other related regulation, for example, under FDA, it's not enough to have a product and the documentation. You also need to have plans in place. So the regulatory framework starts with the idea that if you haven't planned and documented something, you actually haven't done anything. So you could have the best technical documentation on the software that you're running or that you're providing, but if you don't have a plan for how you're going to build the software, then the regulatory authority says that, okay, no, start from the beginning. So step 0, a quality management system in place means that you have clear steps on how you plan and how you actually produce your product. So planning starts from the quality objectives. So from business perspective, it can be the vision and mission, what you want to do. But what are your objectives? You start building a whole system from the objectives, and they need to be documented also. Quality policy, quality objectives. So start with the biggest big hat and define these. What objectives there are for the product you're developing. You need to plan for the resources, the work environment, the infra. Also, when you're coding or doing software development, you need to define that, okay, or plan that I will use this Lenovo laptop and Windows 7, etc., etc. So you need to plan and document almost everything. Saying required verification, what you're planning to do, the validation processes, how you're going to monitor and measure both the product development phase, but also post-market. Do you do any inspection or testing? How do you storage, distribute? Distribution is also relevant for softwares, also storage. And how you ensure the traceability between these activities. And the important part is the acceptance criteria for the product. So you need to define, okay, if we do as we plan, what criteria do we have in order to say that, okay, everything is okay, you can proceed for the next phase. And this documentation is part of the technical file for your product. Design and development phase also starts with the planning. So you need to have a clear plan for your design and development project, including the stages, the reviews needed at each stage. Of course, there are some requirements from the MDR and the quality management system standard, but in addition to that, you can define your own reviews, code review, sprint review, etc. What verification methods you are planning to use, validation methods for each design and development stage. You need to define and plan who is responsible for different stages, who can say that, okay, you can proceed to the next stage, what competencies does it need to have, for example, clinical expertise or coding expertise, who can say that, okay, now you're good with the verification. Planning how you ensure the traceability between outputs and inputs and the resources needed. Competence is a big part of the planning. So the regulation says that only competent personnel can do product development, and competent means that, okay, he or she needs to have also understanding from the regulation and from the requirements. So not only the best coder in the world is enough, you need to have understanding why you're doing things the way you do and how can you verify it. And this is part of the technical file. Some examples of the stages that you can plan. So you have the planning stage. Again, a lot of planning documentation included in the technical file. Then you have the actual design input, collecting requirements from the stakeholders, from the regulation, customers, patients, etc. You gather your design inputs. You will have the design output and the results, reviews running along the implementation and product development. You will have some verification methods, testing, as an example, inspection, things like this. You have the validation, not only the technical testing, verification, but also clinical validation that your product is actually working as it should. So to the patients that it should. You need to plan a transfer for the production and control the changes. Now I see there's a first question from the chat. Does ISO need to be validated, or is it enough that we actually use it? So ISO, I think if you refer to the 13485, to the quality management system ISO standard, it depends on the class. So if you have a class 1 medical device, you don't need to certify it. But if you have a class 2 A2 B3, then you need to certify your ISO quality management system before. Let's have a chat round or a discussion round when I end this first set of slides, and we can have a bigger questions and discussion, and then we go forward. But please use the chat already when you find out that, okay, I need some more information on this one. So I will use the chat and answer to the questions on the break. Good. Inputs. Where do I start? It was the intended purpose. What does it do? What does it not do? What are the performance requirements? What are the functional requirements, usability and safety? Also security requirements. So the product, where you use it, who uses it, what kind of competencies the user has, all of these have effect on the design inputs. The regulatory requirements, not only the GSPR checklist, but you can have other requirements, for example, cybersecurity, or if you're working with hospitals, there might be some other regulatory frameworks that you need to fulfill. Input for design is actually a risk management output. So you need to start doing risk assessment, risk management before you actually do any product development. So considering the intended purpose, for example, the off-label use from the intended purpose, you need to identify some risks related to it. Okay, I see a risk that this patient uses my device different as intended. How can you mitigate it? It's a design input. If you do this kind of, for example, pop-up window, are you sure you want to use this device like you're now going to? Or some other examples. But risk management outputs are design inputs. If you have some benchmarking from similar devices or older previous designs, you can use them also as inputs. design inputting or the requirement setting, they shall be complete, not in conflict with each other. The important thing is that each requirement must be verified or validated, or you need to state the requirement so that you can actually test it. So in such a specific manner that you can have the test driven from the requirement and the validation also. You will have the outputs, again, reviewing what did we have as an input, did we meet them when we had the outputs. Under medical device regulation, the output is not only the product output, it's also about information for purchasing. If you need some licenses or some other hardware components for your device, you need to have that information as design output. You need to have production and service provision, instructions for use, training materials, etc., etc. The outputs needs to have a clear acceptance criteria, why they are okay. From the outputs, you need to specify what are the essential outputs for safe and proper use. So what are related to patient safety, what are related to usability, for example. Can you verify it? So are the inputs described so that they are suitable for verification, so that the output can be verified? And are they released or approved prior to the release? These are all part of the design history file. Reviews, also from the MDR. You need to have a systematic reviews at suitable stages from the design and development. Basically reviewing if the outputs meet the inputs. Do you have the results so that they meet the requirements? Are there any actions needed? Are relevant people attending the review? Meaning that you need to have not only the technical expertise, but also clinical expertise, so that you ensure all the way that the product that you're developing is also fulfilling the intended purpose, fulfilling the medical part of where you want it to be used. And you will have records from these. Verification, basically technical. Have we planned the product correctly? Do we meet the requirements? There can be different verification methods, but you need to still have plans, how you are going to do it, describing test arrangements, methods, acceptance criteria, and sample size if needed. Planning for the resources, systems, and protocols that you're going to use. Documenting the results, conclusions, and necessary actions if needed. Here, it's good to note that if your medical device is going to be connected somewhere or interfacing with other device, you need to do the verification for the whole system or the whole setup. So not only that your part of the device is functioning, you need to ensure that the whole package is functioning when you bring your device there. The validation is about have we planned the correct product. So clinical evaluation is part of the validation. Again, competent personnel must be doing the validation, must define the acceptance criteria, review against the acceptance criteria, and pass it on. So clinical evaluation is part of the validation. You cannot do just technical validation. You need to consider all the time the clinical validity of your product. the transfer planned and documented. So where is your end, or where is your product used? Where do you transfer it? Is it a hospitalized system? Is it some other package deal where your device is one part of it? Do you use it via cloud, via laptop? You need to design and document also these requirements. If you're having a different production environment, has the production capability to meet your product requirements is one important part of the transfer. And then controlling the changes. So you need to identify changes, review, verify, validate them. So merry-go-round, you will have changes in your product development. And MDR says that, okay, it's okay to have changes, but you need to control them. And if there are any new requirements, they need to go through the same pipeline as a normal requirement. So changes linked to risk management, linked to product realization. You need to evaluate the change from different perspectives. Evaluate, then implement, and then again, evaluate and approve. From all of this, you will have an extensive amount of documentation, so-called design and development files. If you check the 13485 standard, there are a few documents that are necessary. So the quality manual, and then all the standard operational procedures, so SOPs, where you define how you're going to do this design and development. So the planning. You will have some tools, records, and the technical file set. Technical file is about the product documentation, the specification, the test plans, test reports, risk management file, etc. So there is quite an extensive list of documentation that you need to fulfill during the design and development. Before I go to what else, it would be good to have a breath now, maybe some questions. There are not that many participants on the webinar at the moment, but I say it already now that if you're watching the recording and you have also some questions, you can send them to me via email, and then I will also answer them later on. But for now, the persons that are attending the webinar, do you have any questions or concerns now? Is your brain smoking? What about that?
Can I start asking?
Yes, please.
So what's the typical strategy for a company who has a software solution and a physical, let's say, device? Do they want to get the software first and then the physical device?
Yeah, you can do both ways. The strategy can be that, okay, you do the package deal or you do them separately. If you do them separately, it might be faster to start with the software, and then I'm not sure about the hardware, but you can, for example, outsource it. So you will have a hardware supplier, and then you will sell it as a medical device on the market. So you can outsource the hardware part and keep the software part with you. But still, if you're the manufacturer of the whole device, so hardware plus software, then you need to ensure that the hardware part is also fulfilling all the requirements from the MDR. If you're just releasing a software and saying that, okay, you can use this software with these type of hardwares, so naming specifically, for example, the cameras, if it's a camera that you use with the software, then you don't need to be that concerned about that the hardware fulfills the requirements, because then the hardware is a totally different company and the manufacturer will ensure the MDR requirements are fulfilled.
Okay, but on the software side, if you just make the algorithm as a medical device, what happens to the software if you're still using like an app or something to collect data?
So just again, what do you mean? What happens to the software if it's?
If I want to make algorithm, a medical device, but not the software that collects the data, because maybe I don't care which sources the data comes from. So it doesn't come only from my app, but it also comes from other sources. What happens then? So I still have to make basically the app as a data collection platform. So I still have to make it as a medical device.
You need to somehow at least control it. So it sounds like you do need to make it a part of your medical device also. But if you consider your architecture of the software, then you can state that, okay, this part of my algorithm or software is non-medical and this part is medical. So it doesn't need the whole extensive documentation, the parts that are not medical. So if it's a database or something like that, if it's a different source of information that you're using, then you can push it as a different module inside your software. But still you need to control that the inputs are correct, for example, etc. You cannot outsource it fully.
But if you think about the health data that's collected from the user, you never know if it's correct or it's not correct, because it's the user's discretion to answer freely and correctly, and so you never know if the data is right.
Yeah, that's true. So what I would consider then is that, is it necessary to have a correct data? Do you need to somehow ensure if the input is correct or not? Or does it affect the diagnosis, for example?
Yeah, and just the question then becomes, if you are doing like an algorithm, you're not interested in the software, you can use the data from, I don't know, Apple Health, Google Health, whatever Health.
Yeah.
Then the question comes down to, like, is the data reliable? You don't control the data. You don't control the data source. You don't control whose data the person enters. Does he even use her or his data? So I cannot see that even if I build like my own app to collect the data, it doesn't sound like I will ever get like correct data from the user. There is always this chance that it's all fake or all like just.
Yeah.
So the strategy becomes: is the algorithm then feasible if I cannot control the pipeline to the data, or should I then only consider from medical device and software as a closed loop system?
I think you just need to somehow document it that via risk management, that okay, if there comes or when there comes incorrect data, that your part somehow evaluates it, that okay, this data I can use and this I cannot use. So it could have some control maybe, but somehow via risk management you should document also this, that okay, you are using this kind of data, you cannot control it, but what does your part of the device or the software or the algorithm do in order to somehow have relevant data going forward? Does it analyze it, say yes, no, this I use, this one I don't use, that kind of?
It raises a lot of questions because you can thermostate the data also.
Let's, I know, sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see if we stay online after these slides, and then we can have a longer discussion about that one. I don't have that many slides yet, so I'm looking forward to any questions or that kind of stuff that we can have a discussion. Okay, let's do it like that, so that we can have this recording under package, and then we can continue with the discussions. Okay, so what else? That was just the chapter 7 of the one standard. So you will have risk management. So depending whether you're under the medical device framework, you will have this 14971. You can also use some other risk management standards if you're not under medical device regulation. But just as an example, you should have some requirements for risk management from some standard. Risk management, like quality management, is a process that is clearly defined in the standard, but also required from the regulation. So you need to have the plans in place, the actual risk management, the reports, and then the follow-up. Basically assessing risk and defining the acceptability of the residual risks that still possibly remain in your medical device. You will have some requirements for usability. So 62366 for medical devices, application of usability engineering. Here you need to consider the interface. If you have a software, then it's the software interface. If it's a hardware, then it's the physical interface of the device. You identify some interface characteristics related to safety. You need to figure out the foreseeable misuse parts when people or patients use your device. You identify the hazards that are related to usability and use of your device, etc. So a big topic, also usability engineering. You will have some requirements for the information that you need to supply with the device. As mentioned before, medical device is not only the software or the hardware, it's also the instructions for use and the training materials that you need to supply with the device. You will have the unique device identifier inside your device and also in all the information that you supply. Labeling is also included here. You will have some requirements on what type of label you need to use, what information needs to be included, etc. From the labeling, there are a set of symbols that you can use or you should use. Also inside the product, but in the information that you supply with the product. And then you will have the cybersecurity aspects for the device. There is this new-ish cybersecurity standard that is going to be also harmonized with other standards. There you can check out the processes that are affected. So the risk management is not only patient safety risks, but there comes this level of security risks. You need to identify and plan for secure coding. How do you ensure it Do you have the correct competencies for that one? You need to do testing, so actually hack your system, test for the vulnerabilities. You need to extend the customer complaints. When we talk about customer complaints under MDR, you need to switch the thinking that actually when we talk about security, it might be a good idea that customers say that, okay, I found out this vulnerability or error in your system. So getting them as a good feedback, even though they are mentioned as complaints. You need to extend the security aspect to your suppliers. How do you ensure that the piece of code or algorithm or hardware is also functioning in a way that it doesn't make any security breaches for the whole system? And then incident reporting for data protecting agencies. So you need to plan in case you have a breach or in case you need a vulnerability or find out. You need, or you will have different communication lines where you need to report them. Good. So just very shortly, this MDR and market entry. So we discussed about the step 0 and the step 1, basically, in this set, training set. And for the quality management system, we did a short deep dive to the chapter 7. There were many different chapters to also be included. What I want to highlight here is the thing I said in the beginning, that when you act under MDR, so medical device regulation, the 0 point is basically when you have the quality management system in place. So even though your product would be ready, it won't do if you don't have the documentation according to the management system done. So the timestamps, basically, that you have reviewed, you have approved, you have went from the inputs to the outputs to the testing, that needs to be in order so that you can start actually the conversations with notified bodies. And that's the cold shower for most of the startups, that, okay, we're basically ready with the product and we would like to do market entry, but we don't have the quality management system in place. And then we just go to the 0 point again and start from the beginning. I don't want to be depressive. It can be done. The most agile and enthusiastic startups do all this in 6 months, and then they wait for the notified body audit this 1 year. But this can be done 6 months, 1 year. But like mentioned, you need to have the clear framework and the clear set of requirements at your disposal before you start. It takes time to add things, and I need to add the security element to the product, etc. So take your time and concentrate on the framework, identifying the necessary requirements from the regulation, legislation, standards, guidances. Build up this requirement list, and then start from there. And then you will have this smoother and faster market entry. Good. Now I would like to just have a discussion feedback question round. If it's okay, you can stop the recording now, and then we can have a more informal question round. If you want to keep it on the recording, then keep it on. But now it's your time to shine. I have been talking for too long.
Thank you, Rosa. That was very, very insightful. So quick poll. So if there's anyone who wants to stop the recording for the time they're asking questions, please let us know. So we're happy to do so, but otherwise we don't need to sort of do this unless there's anyone who says it's exactly necessary. So if I understood correctly, you and Tavi will have a longer chat after the others have also had a chance. So there's several aspects to consider. So do we have any questions from other participants as well before you can continue with Tavi? If there are none at this stage, perhaps I would ask a couple of myself. So if I understood correctly, during the design period, you also sort of have to assess the safety and security aspects of the application, and that led me to wonder that when you do that, is there any like a type of system you have in mind? Because in different markets, different systems can be available, and in different hospitals, different systems can be available. So how do you actually do that? Because the aspects may vary to great extent.
Yeah, so it's about the identification and controlling these. So where do you interface? So identifying those, then maybe already knowing that, okay, you have an older device where you interface with this one. Can your device somehow check the security level of the other one? Can you do some testing, or is it automatically done by the device that, okay, here is a good landing spot, here I can be safe and sound? It is a headache for for most of the softwares that you bring to hospitals, because the systems can vary from, I don't know, 20 years to top notch. So,
but technically, if so how this works is that if for the older system, for example, you have to upgrade your own app, then technically you have to go through the whole process again, right? You have to start with the design and all that, and who is there someone other than the team who has to make this decision? Is it okay if the team decides that no, we don't have to change, and they will then eventually bear the potential consequences, or is there any type of rules or guidelines how you would decide when you have to go through that again? So
yeah, there is it's called significant changes guideline. So if you already have a system in place and now you need to do a gap analysis of what's in place and what's not in place, so you can use this cybersecurity standard, and then there is this guidance for changes. So what you need to consider if you're updating the device, or if you need to start from scratch. So there is this decision tree you can use. I can send the link to the participants later on.
great, yeah, that's very impressive. Quite a bit of work has to go into this, and the developers have to be very aware of what they're doing, and the D&D process has to be really well implemented in the team, because even the small changes may lead to needs to rework some of the things, I'm guessing. So
yeah, so
I haven't actually done it myself ever, but
it is the traceability is important. That if you do any changes, you need to evaluate if it's affecting other things, if you do the whole design from scratch, or if you just do patching from here and there. The most important stuff is that you have documented the decision you have made, why you have made some decisions. So with that, you can go far, and hopefully it also is enough. Sometimes no.
thank you, Rosa. Do we have any other questions? Any other comments? If not, and yeah, please.
Was it Martin? You wanted to ask something, or?
Yeah, hi Rosa, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, a very clear and good insight. So thank you for that. My question relates to this the review process of the notified body. So you mentioned that this can take up to a year.
Yeah.
So is there any fast tracks? Is there any way if you are in a situation where you and I can imagine that the startups can find themselves in such situation that where they would need this kind of a fast track. So is there anything that
yeah, we have one contact, an Italian notified body that gives this fast track service. It's also
so this is kind of like a separate service. So this is not something that all the notified bodies would offer.
It's the same content, but there you can have it more fast, but also more expensive. So
Right.
that was it came 2 weeks ago, this information that there is
Right.
one that provides this fast track, fast prices, fast track. But still, if you need to have your device on the market, then
Yeah, asking for a friend.
yeah, I can send the information also to this guy who said that fast track is available.
Good.
Yeah, impressive. I was also not aware of this this option, so very nice to hear. Like at the airport, that you can fast track your solution with a little bit of, and not also available in all the airports, as I recently discovered. So this can also happen.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any other questions? Any other comments? If not, then if I understood correctly, you would like to have a couple of additional words with Taavi, more specifically on his topics. Did I understand correctly, or do you?
Yeah, I think I didn't answer it yet. So if you want to stay online, you can stay, but I will continue with Taavi. He had some questions.
Understood. So Rosa, many thanks for opening up this topic for a wider audience, and we will leave you to discuss with Taavi the specific aspects of his invention. And was a great pleasure to have you all here, and hoping to meet you already during our next webinar. So thank you.
Thank you.